made this bag probably about 6 months ago, and I have loved using it ever since I made it. It's probably the thing that I've made that I use the most. Now that I'm going to be making these and selling these at a craft show in a couple months, I thought it'd be a great idea to make a tutorial for how to make these. It's just a super simple, easy project to do that doesn't require much fabric, and it's also just super functional. So it's great as a gift or even just to use for yourself like I've done. I tried looking up similar things online, and there's not anything like this really that's like handmade or has the little tie. I am basing this pattern off of a tutorial I found on a blog off of Pinterest, but I changed the measurements drastically because that was for a laptop size and this is much smaller, although you can readjust the measurements to be that size again. And I also added the tie to close it. I'm going to show you how to make this, and yes. For this project, you're going to need roughly around a yard total of fabric, split into either 2 or 3 different fabrics, depending on whether or not you choose to have a different lining than your outer layer. So you're going to need pieces of your outer layer and then also pieces for the lining, and then as well as a interfacing, or what I used is a cotton canvas to reinforce the fabric of this bag to make it sturdier. Now I'm going to show all the pieces here and along with their measurements. Now the first step is to base your interfacing to your fabric layers. That includes the bag flap, the bag panels, the bag strip, and the strap. For nearly all of these pieces, you can just baste the edges together, but for the strap, you'll want to pin your interfacing down in the middle of it. Next, I'm going to put the flat pieces together and fold them in half and trim around the corners to give both sides a rounded edge. Then I sewed those together and clipped around the edge of the curve to make it flatter when turned right side out. Then I pressed this flat and added a top stitch around the edge. Next, I pressed and sewed the strap together. Then I pressed it again, making sure that the seam was in the middle of the strap. Then I pressed about 1/4 inch on each of the edges of the pocket and about 1/2 inch on the top edge of the pocket. This is just a preference thing, but I like having a little bit of a larger edge on the top of the pocket. Then I sewed this to the lining layer of one of the bag panels. Next, you're going to need both of your lining panels and the lining strip. You're going to want to take the panel that has the pocket first to ensure that you sew the pocket right side up, and pin the bag strip into place. Now the corner part is a little bit tricky, but you're just going to want to place a pin on the one side about 1 inch above the corner, and then fold the rest of the fabric out of the way and place another pin in the same place but on the bottom of the panel. Then when it comes to sewing around the corner, you're just going to want to kind of pleat that extra fabric down and sew around using a curve. Then you're going to do the exact same thing with the other side of your lining panel and follow those exact same steps for your outer layer of fabric. Then you're going to turn the outer layer right side out and pin and baste on the flap and the strap. There are two options for sewing on the tie. The first is to sew it on just the outer layer before sewing the outer and lining layers together. There will be a little fixing to the tie after the lining and outer layers are sewn together, like I'm showing here, which I will explain at the end. Or you can sew it on after the lining and outer layers are put together, which the stitches could interfere with the pocket inside, but I did find that this makes a great little holder for pencils. In this video, I'm going to show sewing the tie before because the steps are the same as sewing it on after, except for a little fixing at the end. I pressed the tie in half and then sewed down the edge and then turned it right side out. Next, I'm going to measure and find the center of the tie, and then measure and find the center of the bag. You only need to measure from the top of the flap all the way around the back to about an inch or so above the seam in the front of the bag. Then measure across the bag to find the center there and pin the strap in place. Then I top stitch along both edges of the tie. Then I folded down the raw edges of the tie and sewed them into place. Then on the inside of the bag, you're going to want to unpick the stitches where it overlaps the seam of the flap, because this is where we are going to sew when we attach the lining layer and outer layers together. Then with the lining layer still inside out and with the outer layer with right sides out, you're going to want to place the outer layer inside of the lining layer so that the right sides are touching. And then you're going to want to pin and sew along the edges of those. When you sew these together, make sure to leave about a 4 or 5 inch gap so that way you can turn the entire thing inside out. Next, I'm going to pin down that opening and close it with the top stitch. Next, I'm going back to the tie and sewing over that little spot where we had to clip a couple stitches. Or if you decided to sew on the tie after we'd sewed the outer and lining layers together, this is where you would do it. And after that, your bag is completed. I always love how these bags turn out. They're just so cute and simple to make. And not only that, they're a great project to make with scrap fabrics that you can actually use on a daily basis. So thank you for watching and happy sewing!